So it's 11:05 and we're trying to respect everyone's time, obviously, and people can then join in. And Kieran, since you're here with us, you get exclusive question with us. So again, thank you for joining and welcome to iLearn Saturday with Design and Indicators for Program led by Cassange Bitère. Cassange, if you don't mind, the stage is all yours and let me know if I should pin you.
Thank you. So just give me a second. I think my internet is. Can you see my screen?
I
Is
see your
everything okay on my
screen.
side?
I see
Okay,
your
perfect.
screen. Yeah. I just
So
don't see your
just in
video.
case, yeah, because I'm trying to, my internet is not working perfectly, and I don't
Okay.
want to put my video on so I don't mess it up.
No, it's fine.
But just for the beginning, let me try to put my video at least people can see my face. Just wait a second. Yeah, so that's me. As I'm going to introduce myself, I will have my video on, but after that, I'm going to turn it off so my internet can see work perfectly for this presentation. So my name is Cassange Bitère, originally from Haiti, currently living in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a monitoring and evaluation specialist, I would say. I completed my master's degree in 2024 from Emo University in development practice. In terms of work experience, I've worked since 2019 in the world of development, I would say. I studied in Haiti with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, where I worked as a monitoring and evaluation officer. And then when I moved to the US, I started working with Care USA. I've had other assignments with Care Cote d'Ivoire, Care Kenya, Mali, and Nigeria. And currently, I work as a lead consultant with him and associate, where I do some type of evaluation work for DC Health Department, Stanford University. I also develop courses for San Jose State University and also University of Rhode Island. So basically, that's what I do. I also have other type of work that I do with CCMRH, where I work as operations specialist there, and I do some training for SOP NGO every time, which is the Iron Saturday that you're having today. So basically, that's me. And today we're going to talk about indicators. I'm going to turn off my video now, so I don't have any issue through this presentation. So today we're going to talk about indicators, and how do you design indicators for your program and stuff like that. So our agenda for today is going to be like just briefly, I'm going to talk about program design, and in which I'm going to do like a summary of monitoring and evaluation and also theory of change, and then we're going to start talking about indicators. Within indicators, we're going to see the SMART criteria to develop an indicator and example of indicators as well, and what to consider and the step-by-step the step-by-step path you should take to kind of develop indicators as well. I will also talk about log frame or result framework. That's how I mostly like to call it. And some key considerations, such as like what to keep in mind when developing indicators and what to avoid, and some additional resources. This is going to be a really short presentation, but I'm expecting for those who are present, if they have any questions, if they are working on a project right now and they are trying to develop indicators, if you want to ask specific questions, you will have the opportunity to ask me those questions. And in terms of learning, I am hoping that everybody will understand the importance of indicators in program design and that you will be able to design indicators that are smart. Also, I'm expecting that you'll know how to sort of like connect goals with your indicators and be able to distinguish the types of indicators, which are mostly performance indicators and also outcome indicators or impact indicators as well. So just before we begin, I'm going to briefly talk about program design, what it is exactly. So in a program design, what you really do is that you define the goal of your program and how you plan to achieve the program. And in this program design or this program document, I would say you will have to include your activities, the group that you're expecting to work with, and the timelines that you're expected to achieve the goal that you have in within your program. And the way I also want you to think about program design is like, as I put it in this example here, it's like you're building a house. Your objectives are to have like different rooms in the house, but your activities are the bricks. I know that can be a little complicated to understand, but another example I can actually use would be like, let's say that you're a fitness coach and you're designing a program for your clients that are on a journey to lose, let's say, to lose weight. So you design their program like the type of resources that you have for them. It might be like meal plans that you're going to prepare for them. And in terms of activities, you're going to design certain activities for them to go to the gym. The activities might be to do some cardio, to do some abs or core, and to do some weightlifting and stuff like that. And they have to do it at certain specific time of the week. It might be like 3 times a week or 4 times a week and things like that. So this is how you design the program. And then your expected results are mostly like the person that you're training is going to lose weight in certain amount of time as well. So this is how you design a program. Even though I give you the example of a fitness coach. But if it's like let's say a health program, that's these are all the things that you're going to be thinking about, like in terms of like inputs. What are the resources you have? What are the activities you're going to implement? What are the expected results from these activities? And what are the behaviors you're trying to change and the bigger impact that you're trying to achieve as well? And when you design like a program as well, you must be able to track this program. And by tracking it, you need to ask your questions like, is that program working? Are we making progress? And what needs to be adjusted in this program? In order to be able to do so, you need to include it within your program plan, what we call the monitoring and evaluation tool. And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize on here is that so many people, when they hear the word monitoring and evaluation, they think of it as one thing or as one activity in the project. But it's not just one activity in the project. It is something that will help you to understand how your project is working, if your project is working actually, and where and when you need to make some adjustment. So in this, as you can see on the screen here, I do separate monitoring and evaluation, even though sometimes they do work together, they inform each other. I mean, monitoring inform the evaluation most of the time, but doing monitoring is different from doing evaluation. Monitoring is like you're doing some routine tracking of your activities and outputs to understand how your program is working or how your program is being implemented. And by this, what you're going to track, these are mostly your activities and the outputs from the activities as well, so that you can get data on how, like, for example, if your program was to do like some type of training, you can get data on how many trainings you have been able to to do within your program and how many people took part of this training and how many people are trained within your program as well. So these are the part that monitoring do, but evaluation goes a little further. It doesn't happen too often compared to monitoring. Monitoring happens regularly, I would say, because you need to collect data. Like sometimes it might be weekly, sometimes it might be monthly. It also depends on the indicators that you have to collect to actually track the program. But evaluation happens at specific time. So for example, you might have an evaluation that happens in the middle of the project because you need to understand midway how the program is or how the program is being implemented. So these are times when you actually do some type of evaluation. And compared to monitoring, it doesn't really assess like specific indicators. It helps you understand the how and the why behind what the indicators are telling you, behind the numbers actually. So basically that's the difference that we do between monitoring and evaluation. But some key considerations that you need to take when you're doing like when you're building like a monitoring and evaluation system, you kind of like want to you kind of want to ask questions of like what are the aspects of the program that are important for you to measure or to track actually, so you can make important decisions within the during the program implementation, and which data are kind of like critical for timely management adjustment. And that's when you kind of like figure that you're tracking this type of training or this behavior that you're trying to change is not changing. So
That's all.
that's when the yes,
So sorry.
can you hear me?
Can you repeat that last sentence? You were cut off.
Where did I cut off? Because I've been saying so many things.
It was you mentioned when it is.
When it is, oh, is it about the considerations, maybe?
I believe so.
I was talking, I was talking about the key considerations, like certain questions that you need to ask when building a monitoring and evaluation system. There are questions like what aspect of the program that you must be measured to consistently judge your program or track your progress. Um, which data are critical to for timely management. Let's say that your program is trying to change certain behaviors and you're monitoring, when you're doing your monitoring, the data is telling you that the behavior that you're trying to change is not really happening, and you found that midway of your program. So this is when it's really important for you to kind of like go back to your indicator and go back to your activities to understand exactly why this behavior is not changing and what adjustment you can make to make it happen. So that's why it's important for you to do monitoring and evaluation at not at the same time, but to have it included in your project or your program so that you can understand exactly where you need to make some change. And the last question is, how can monitoring align with both operational realities and learning needs? And this kind of relates to what I just said earlier. It's because when you're doing monitoring, you actually do monitoring to also understand how you should evaluate your program or where you should evaluate your program. So when you're doing the monitoring part of your program, it is also preparing you to understand exactly what aspect of the program will need some evaluation. So that's why you should also ask that question when you're building your monitoring and evaluation system. But when you do have your monitoring and evaluation system, there are other tools within that monitoring and evaluation system that is really important for you or for anybody or any colleagues working on this project with your program to kind of understand what your program is trying to achieve. And this is what we call theory of change or logic model. So what it does, it kind of like shows you the roadmap to achieve the goal that your program is trying to achieve, such as the activities, the outputs, the short-term outcomes, and the intermediate outcomes. And we do have the final part, which is the impacts. Most of the time, in theory of change, you will also see inputs before activities, but in this theory of change I have here, I don't have it. But inputs are usually like funding, the material that you may have that you can actually use to make your activities happen. I'm sorry, someone had a question. So what I was saying is that inputs are all things that you currently have within your program to make the activities happen. And when you do, when you take the actions or when you're doing the activities, you're actually expecting to get some results, and these results are the outputs. And the outputs will lead to the expected change in behavior and the bigger impact that you're trying to achieve. One of the things I wanted to emphasize on here in the output here that you're seeing here, you see I use some acronyms, HIV and LAIRT. LAIRT is a type of treatment for HIV, which is the injectable. They call it long-acting injection antiretroviral therapy. So most of the time you will see a theory of change. Like if you do a Google search right now, you might be looking at the theory of change. In the output section, you'll see people put the indicators, but not the actual statement for the output of the expected result from the activities. This is not a bad practice, but people who are not used to what theory of change is and what indicators are, they might be confused to to make the difference between the output and the indicator. So I'm not saying like you can't do it, it's a bad practice. It's not. But it's mostly for people who are used to or who have like a lot of years of work experience in the field. They when they see it, they really understand what's happening behind it. But for first time learner, I usually use like the statements instead of using the indicators. But don't be surprised if you go somewhere else and you see people putting indicators in the output section. And as I was saying, the theory of change or logic model, what it helps you to do is to clarify the goals of your program and to also make some assumptions. And it kind of sets the foundation for tracking certain indicators or to create certain indicators, and which is the topic of our session for today. So here we're going to start talking about the indicators, and I do have a definition of indicators here, but the way I want to explain indicators is like I want you to see it as your vital signs. Like if you go to the doctor, they do some checkup on you, like to check your blood pressure or your heart rate to see how everything is working in your body. So these are certain indicators that the doctors are checking on you. Let's say that your human body is like a project or a program, and the doctors are using these indicators to understand how your body is working. And if something is not working well, they can make some decision to kind of like make improvement or adjustment. So this is the way I see I can explain indicators better for you to understand and then apply to a program so you understand exactly that what indicators are trying to do when you design them for your program. So to kind of break it down with you, as you saw earlier for the theory of change, we do have the input, the activities, the outputs, short-term outcomes, intermediate outcome, and impact. For inputs, as I said earlier, they are the resources that you have. And usually resources, staff, I don't think staff, I mean, in my experience, I've never really personally tracked resources or inputs, but they are mostly done by the administrative or the executive staff, I would say. But that doesn't mean like the staff cannot do it. Some of them, the staff might be able to do it, but it's all usually like the upper management that do this tracking because they relate to the funding that is being distributed for the program. So that's why most of the time, when you see a theory of change tool, people don't really put inputs or resources in the theory of change because they know they're not going to really track it. So yeah, as I was saying, resources are like these type of, I mean, inputs are like this type of resources, funding, staff, it can be materials and stuff like that. But for activities, the activities are the actions that you're going to be taking in order to kind of like achieve the goal that the program is trying to achieve. And here for the activities, you're tracking what the program does with the resources, the money that you have, the stuff that you have, and the material they give to you. And these are like the actual resources, such as like training sessions, some outreach events, or services being delivered and stuff like that. And for the outputs, they are like direct results from your activities, and outputs are kind of like the intermediate products that come from your activities actually. And for example, like an output maybe as I let me go back to this. The output might be like HIV care providers were trained and ready to administer. I'm sorry for the typo to administer LAIRT. So this is the type of activities that I mean the outputs that can come out of like on this video of like training activities and stuff like that. So um so this is what the output section output indicators are measuring, like the number of people who participate in a training or the number of training that you've had within the program and things like that. And we do have outcomes after that. And for short-term outcomes, they are like change that we can actually notice right after the output. And these changes can be like certain increase of knowledge or change in behavior and things like that. And I mean, not intermediate, but like impacts are usually like the bigger picture that your program is trying to achieve or the program is trying to change actually. So when you have like impact indicators, you're actually going to measure that broader or long-term result from the project. Anybody has any question about this section or this slide because I know I'm talking a little too much right now. I don't know if anybody's getting confused or anything.
Nothing from my end and nothing in the chat.
Okay. So I'm assuming everybody is kind of like following me still. So one other thing that is important when you design indicators, you need to kind of follow the SMART criteria for to develop indicators. And what I mean by that, the SMART criteria, I think everybody are working in the field, kind of like they kind of like see or heard people talk about SMART criteria, and this is things like being specific, measurable, achievable, and relevant and time bound. And for when you're developing indicators, they actually need to be specific. And by this, it means like the indicators should be clear on what you're trying to measure and also who, who it applies to, I would say. So for this, you shouldn't be using like some vague wording. So for example, don't just say things like improve school attendance or improve knowledge of the girls in the area and stuff like that. And this is what we mean by being specific. Like you need to actually, I think as the example is saying here, actually show how many, like the numbers that you're trying to, the number of people that you're trying to impact and within what time frame that you're trying to make this impact happen. And for measurable, the indicator actually should be able, you should be able to count the indicator if it's a quantitative indicator. This is something that is really different. In certain programs, sometimes the indicators that you're developing, they are not quantifiable because you have like qualitative indicators when you're trying to see change in perception and and opinion and things like that. But most of the time, you still have some quantitative indicators because you're trying to track how many events that happen or how many people actually participate in like some training sessions. So that's why we mostly talk about quantitative indicators, but some indicators can be also qualitative. Mostly when you're going to do some evaluation and you want to understand the how and the why behind the indicator or behind the data, you actually develop some type of qualitative indicators. So by measurable, what we mean is that it should be able to be quantified and to track it. Like what I mean by tracking it is like you need to be able to verify the data, and to verify it, you need something that we call the evidence document or the means of verification. For example, if you're doing like training session, one of the means of verification for the numbers that you're going to report towards the indicator might be the attendance list. So that's one of the documents that you're going to use to actually verify that the data is legit, I would say. And it should be achievable, like your target should be really realistic and that you might need to actually make it happen, and the timeline and also the context. Like, do you have enough money to track this data and things like that? Do you have enough people to actually help you track this data actually? These are all the things that you will learn. And there's the relevancy, there's the time bound as well. You also need to be like to align for the relevancy, you need to align the indicators with the program's goal and the theory of change that we've seen earlier, and also have a time frame for the achievement that I also mentioned earlier. And as an example of indicator, I have this here, which is 85% of girls enrolled in the mentorship program will attend school at least 90% of the time by the end of the year. This is a smart indicator because first of all, it tells you what the indicator is tracking. The indicator is tracking the mentorship program. And it also tells you the target group, which is for the target group, which is girls, and the number of like girls that they want to impact, which is 85%. And what they're trying to achieve is at least to have them go to school for 95% of the time by the end of the year. So you have like the specific time frame for this indicator as well. And we do have other example of indicators here. And what I wanted to emphasize on is that when you are developing indicators, for example, you have your theory of change, you have all your activities in your theory of change. and the inputs, the outputs, the outcome, and stuff like that, you need to develop indicators that can actually help you track all the components of your theory of change. If an indicator is not tracking something from your theory of change, it means it's it doesn't have its place in your program or in your indicator list. And you need to have specific indicators for each component. You need to have indicators to track the activities. You need to have indicators to track the outputs. And that's where the confusion comes sometimes when people are putting indicators within the output component, because sometimes people are like, well, we actually have indicators in the output section, but they are tracking the activities, but we don't have indicators for the outputs. How are we going to track the outputs then? That's why it's confusing for first-time learner to understand the difference between indicators and statement within the component of the theory of change. And this example of indicators here, I put them because I just wanted to make the difference between like each component of the theory of change, because you need to have indicators for each of them: activities, output, outcome, and impact as well. And these are like things that you need to consider to develop smart indicators. So for the first one, we have alignment with program logic model. And what I mean by that is that your indicator should be kind of like connected to something that is specific in your logic model, which I just said earlier. It should be connected to either the activity, the output, or the outcome, or even the impact as well. And if it does not connect to it, or if it doesn't link to it, to your logic model, actually, you need to ask yourself, why do you have this indicator? Is it going to be able to inform your project or to inform future decision? And for clarity and precision, it's about the wording most of the time, because you cannot use just vague indicators. You need the indicator to actually tell you what specific activity or what specific component of the theory of change is trying to, it's tracking actually, and who are you tracking? Are girls, are they like mothers, are they parents, and stuff like that? You have to try to have that clarification. And that's the measurability part. This means like you should be able to track it using like current data, actual data. Can you count your data? Can you collect this data? If you cannot collect this data and if you cannot count this data, it's probably not like a smart indicator. You actually need to rethink and reward it in a way that is actually smart. Is it feasible? Just because you can actually measure something doesn't mean that you should actually measure it, because if it's not going to give you any information that can improve your program or that can tell your program is working perfectly or not perfectly but well, you actually don't need to try that. Because remember, when you're tracking indicators, you're actually spending money and using your staff, and you need to have time to do all that. So you actually need something that is going to give you enough information about your program. And there's the relevancy and accountability, but you have to make sure that your indicator is telling you something that is useful and something that will help improve your program or make certain decisions in the future. And there's the sensitivity to change. Your indicator actually should be able to kind of show you what change is happening within your target group or within a community that you're working with. And if something is worsening, you actually can make informed decision about that thing that is kind of like worsening or going bad. Or if something is good, and if you can learn lessons from that thing, your indicator actually can tell you something is working good, and this is all the lessons that we're learning from it. And you can actually use that lessons to improve other parts of your project as well. And I put disaggregation potential because sometimes you're doing like you're having a project in the community and it's working for a specific group and it's not working for another group. You need to be able to kind of see the difference, to understand that difference and make informed decision about it. And actually, the way you can actually build strong indicators step by step program. So when you design indicators, or if you want your indicators to be strong, you actually need to revisit. Can you hear me? I think my internet is going bad right now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, when I studied this presentation today, I was talking about program design. So when you design your indicators, one thing you need to do is to revisit your program design to understand the objective and the change that you are trying to achieve within your program. And you also need to kind of like clarify your assumption about what success will look like, and then the components of your logic model or theory of change, and what needs to be measured. And from there, you can actually start drafting smart indicators that are like very specific and measurable as well. Um, but while you're making like while you like making sure that you kind of like determine your like data source for the indicators or where your data is coming from, you also need to plan the data collection, like how that data will be collected and who also will be collecting the data for you. And at the same time, you need to assign the role to someone. Like there are data that you're going to collect that if you are part of the executive upper management, maybe personally you're not going to be able to collect this data. People working on the field are the ones that are going to be able to collect this data for you. So you need to assign the role to like specific staff to collect this data for you. And all this planning should be part of what we call the result framework. And result framework is basically like another tool within your monitoring and evaluation system, I would say, that help you organize your project clearly and logically. And the way I want you to think about it is like it's a summary table that shows all the activities, the outputs, the outcomes of your project, all these indicators for the outputs actually for all the components of your theory of change and how they would be measured. It's kind of like similar to your logic model, but it gives you more detail about how these indicators will be tracked. And I do have, I don't know if I can open it here. Let me try. Okay. Oh, I have it here. I'm gonna stop sharing and reshare again because I wanted to show you a document. Uh, can you see the new screen? Can you see the new screen?
We were seeing your screen, like the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. So you see it. Okay. So this is the result framework. And the reason why um, this one is that, okay, let me use it for an evaluation plan. So the reason why I'm going to show this is because I do have some type of example in it. So what it looks like, we're just going to give up on this evaluation question section because it's for evaluation plan. I'm not going to talk about it. But what it should be looking like is like you do have indicators. You have that, for example, this indicator is telling you percentage of parents who report lack of knowledge about HPV and the definition of or the meaning of the indicators, like what this indicator is trying to do. And we're going to forget about the type of evaluation because that's not what we're talking about right now. And you do
We lost you. Ooh. I believe Cassange lost Wi-Fi, but he should be reconnecting pretty soon. Let's just give him a few seconds. And in the meantime, if anyone have any questions, you can drop it in the chat and we'll ask away.
I'm sorry. Let me share again. You see my screen now?
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I was talking about the design value, and I was using an example of like a project that is trying to improve access to education in a community for young girls. Let's say in that a community, only 30% before the implementation of your program, only 30% of girls had access to education. So your baseline value here is going to be 30% of girls, 30% or 30% of girls have access line. That's why you put not applicable. But as, on the field, what we try to do, we actually try to maybe use like proxy indicators to have baseline. Proxy indicators are like indicators that's specific to yours, but that can actually give you some data about the indicator or can inform your indicator as well. And we do have the target value. Target value is like what is the expected goal of the project? How many girls are you trying to give access to education? Is it going to be 85%? Is it going to be 90%? So there you're going to put your target value here. Like, is it 95%? Is it 85%? But in between the baseline and the target value, I think sometimes people would put like the actual progress for year one, year two, or maybe per quarter. Quarter one, did we actually improve from 30% to 50%? Quarter two, did we actually improve from 50% to 70% or something like that? Or maybe by year as well. And the most important part of this result framework is to have your data source and how the data is going to be collected. Is it going to be through survey? Is it going to be through attendance list from the school and stuff like that? And you need to put the disaggregation plan. Is it going to, how are you going to disaggregate your data by age, by gender, by region, or by educational level and things like that. Not all indicators can be disaggregated, but when it's really important for you to disaggregate is when you need to make a difference between the group that is benefiting from the specific part of the project and the group that is not really benefiting, or when you need to make a comparison between different groups actually. How often you're going to collect this data? Is it going to be monthly? Is it going to be per week and stuff like that? And you do have your data quality enrichment strategy, how you're going to make sure that your data is accurate, complete, and securely stored, because you need to protect people's personal information as well. What type of analysis plan are you going to do? For quantitative data, mostly you do like some descriptive statistics. Sometimes you go a little deeper than that. And who's going to be responsible for this data collection and how you're going to use that information that you're going to get from analysis from your analysis and stuff like that. And what are we going to use that data for? What type of like decision are you going to make with that data, which is the anticipated outcomes? How are you going to use that data to inform future intervention or your program and stuff like that? So this is basically what a like it's not like this has to be the way to do. This is one of the ways that you can do it. There are other result frameworks that are kind of like that are more complex than that. It depends on the scope of your project, what
We lost you once again.
um
You were saying it depends on this cover view.
can you hear me?
Now I can. Not sure if you're speaking though. Let's give him another second. Once we're done with this recording, we will share the presentation as well as I do believe that Cassange would also then share the Excel spreadsheet. That way you guys can make a copy with the examples. I'm not sure if Cassange, maybe you can chime on this if whether or not the examples you have listed will be shared with everyone.
But what was the question? I'm sorry.
The question is, will the template of the tracker you currently have will be shared with the group?
I can share it with the group. Yeah,
Great.
I can share it. Yeah, I will definitely do that. I think I had one more slide to go over. I don't know if you're seeing my screen. Can you give me
No.
access again, please?
Uh, you already do. Wait, no.
No, because I had to come back.
There you go.
Thank you. I think this is the last slide, and now I'm using my phone hotspot, so I'm sure that my internet is not disconnected again.
Okay.
So for this one, I wanted to kind of like focus on what you should keep in mind when developing indicators. And these are things like you need to link your indicators directly to your monitoring and evaluation framework, and most importantly with your theory of change. You need to define your data source. You need to have your method to that for data collection included in your result framework. And you have to have timing for the data to be collected and the person who's going to be responsible to collect this data. And try not to have too many indicators in your result framework or in your like indicator list. Because having too many indicators actually also means having enough resources, mostly funding, to collect this data and having enough people to collect all this data for you. These are things that you need to consider. And what you need to avoid is having like vague or immeasurable indicators, things that cannot really be quantified or collected. We might not be able to quantify something as long as it is a qualitative indicator that is actually telling you the how and the why behind the data. You can actually still have it, but most of the time you'll see people do qualitative indicators when they are planning for deeper evaluation, when they need to understand the why and the how behind the programming behind the data. And yeah, as I said earlier, don't use too many indicators, and the indicators should be aligned to your program goals and to your theory of change and monitoring and evaluation plan. And try to always have plan for your data collection. If you don't have a plan for data collection, it also means you're not going to understand how your project is working. You're not going to be able to make informed decision. So these are things that you need to avoid. And I think this was my last slide for the presentation. After that, I think I have a list of resources that you will have access to when I send the slides to you. You'll have access to all these resources as well. And I'll make sure to include the template that I just used for the presentation in the document that I'm going to send out to you as well. So this is it. And thank you for your participation. Maybe you have questions for me. Maybe you're working on a project right now and you need to develop indicators. We have 10 more minutes if you want to go over them.
So if you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat or unmute yourself to ask the question. And but for now, Cassange, I think like it wasn't necessarily a question. You made a statement earlier that says using your indicators basically helps you identify what's not working before you're at the final stage. I think the statement that you use says it's working for one group, but not for the other. And as we know, like in programming or just having any form of initiative for any community, you need to have not only indicators, but you need to constantly be evaluating the people, the participants that are joining or taking part of your initiative. That way you know what's working and what's not working. That way you don't wait till the final stage to ask people, okay, so what worked?
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
do you want
And
to touch a little bit on like maybe give us an example of like of a situation where you could say you started the project or the project was started not by you necessarily, but no indicators were used, and you guys waited towards the end to do evaluation, and which was not ultimately beneficial to the project.
Personally, haven't worked on a project that I haven't experienced that personally, but an example maybe I can use is I was considered for a consultancy, for an evaluation consultancy sometime this year. And when I was talking to the people, I was asking them what do they want to evaluate? What do they want to understand out of this evaluation that they want to do? And I asked them for their indicators and things like that. And they were like, we don't have indicators. And I was shocked because I'm like, okay, but how am I going to understand your program and how am I going to help you evaluate your program if it's working and if it's not working? And they told me that I just need to talk to the people. I didn't take this opportunity to do the job, not because I was scared to do it, but because honestly, because of the overload of work that it was going to I mean, it was going to be like a lot of work for me to kind of like connect with the people. I had to do it within 10 days period, which was not feasible, I would say. So I didn't really do it. But what I did is that I asked them for their documents, like some type of reports that they had from their grantees. I tried to read through all these reports and I tried to implement, not implement, but to draft like some indicators that they can actually track to understand the change that happened before and after the program completed. So based on these indicators, they could actually talk to people to understand why this part worked for them and why this part didn't work for them. So that's what I've done, but I haven't really worked on a project that where a group was benefiting more and a group was not really benefiting from the project, to be honest. But I know it happens. I know it happens. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that. Did anyone else have any questions by chance? Nope. Okay. If that is it, Cassange, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Carrie-Anne, for joining us today. We will be sending over the recording as well as the presentation in the slides, the tracker that Cassange shared. And hopefully you guys can also then give us your inputs for future reference, future Island Saturdays. And we're closing out a bit because it's 7 minutes early. Enjoy the rest of your Saturdays. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send us an email.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Right then. Bye, everyone.